we ask if it was another good performance under Tuchel for you, Nedum?
Yeah, I think it was. I think as you look back to the end of last season, that friendly defeat to Senegal, there were probably a few question marks asked about the team. You know, the energy was a bit low. They weren't performing to their absolute best. But since then, obviously outside of the political side of things in terms of who he's picking with Bellingham's, Foden's and so on, the team's performed really, really well. You know, it's another game without conceding a goal. And even though that group itself now looks like it's a very easy group for England, I think they've made it easy. I think they've been ruthless, they've been clinical with their finishing, very solid with the defending. And they don't really offer the opposition a ton of encouragement either. So yeah, it's been very, very impressive. And as you say, Kay, it is officially coming home because now they're on their way to the World Cup.
Yeah, I don't know why you were getting so upset, Shaka, about
it's coming
the
home.
suggestion that it's coming home.
Because they're on the way to the World Cup, is that what Nedum just said? Now that they're there, it's decided. Oh, boy.
But obviously, Nedum just mentioned the political side of things there. They've done it without the big names, some of the big names.
So, some of the big names. Listen, but to that point, it's Latvia. And well, yes, this group could have gone a whole lot differently. Truthfully, I don't think anybody's surprised to see England sitting top of this group as comfortably as they are. Latvia did have a couple of opportunities. Pickford did have to make a couple of saves himself. But other than that, this really was smooth sailing for England. They had no real issue with dispatching of Latvia.
Don't ask me to get excited about England because they beat Latvia 5-0.
It's Latvia.
Tuchel has talked about team spirit in this camp. How important is it?
Well, it is, but you're not going to find out how good your team spirit is until you actually have everybody that is supposed to be part of this squad. And so whatever is that is going on between Tuchel and Jude Bellingham is one of the best players in England. He should be part of this national team, and eventually he will be. And so that needs to be addressed, that needs to be put out there, and whatever differences there are, those things need to be put aside so that England can focus on being one of the best teams in the world. Talent-wise, the talent level of England is there close to the top. Not at the quite best level just yet, but they're quite close to the top. And part of that reason is because you have players like Jude Bellingham available. So he needs to be on the field. Phil Foden needs to be on the field. If they're at their best, they elevate England to a point to where maybe you can have the discussion of actually coming home. You can have the discussion of them being at the level of Spain, at the level of France, at the level of Argentina. We can have that conversation, but you need your best players available, and indeed you need team spirit, and indeed you need a good relationship between the coach and the player. So these are things that you're going to have to navigate because, oh, by the way, the World Cup is not until next June. We are October. There's a lot of things that need to happen from here till then. A lot of that has to do with how indeed you build this chemistry. And if indeed you do, and you have this good of players, and you have this good a level, you should be in the conversation among teams that is going to make a difference in the knockout stage of the competition.
Do you agree with Ale, Nedum?
Yeah, I would say so. And I think the thing that's probably a bit different in this instance is the fact that Thomas Tuchel is still relatively new in his position as England manager. So he's getting a look at people for the first time. You know, he can't say, for example, go back to his experiences in the last Euros and see how the camp was because he wasn't there. You know, that wasn't his England side as such. So he's making these decisions at this moment in time, but he'll very much understand that when it comes down to winning a World Cup, sometimes maybe you need more of a maverick type player because to qualify, you know, all these pieces that England have, it's very, very good. They've got depth, it feels everywhere. And, you know, you mentioned Phil Foden, you've mentioned Jude Bellingham, but there's also the likes of Cole Palmer, you know, and a few others to come back into that side potentially. So he's going to have a ton of options, but he's got to make sure that the balance is right. I think in these 10-day trips that he's had in October, in September, you know, the ones in the summer, he's gotten a feel for the personalities, but then also the ability. And the key is sort of trying to find the level that, you know, he wants within that space, within the camp. And if you believe somebody's going to be negative and take away from it, I think in some ways you'd probably be right to say not put them in the squad. But I think someone like a Jude Bellingham and those others, if those accusations are true that maybe they are a bit disruptive, I bet all that stuff changes when you're playing at the largest scene in world football. You know, it is the World Cup, playing for your country. So I think sometimes you sort of bridge some of those issues that you have with other people and just do everything you can to try and be successful and, you know, leave a sort of mark in history.
Can I ask a question to Nedum? He's a man who probably has more information on this than I do. What are the issues with Jude Bellingham? What are the accusations? What is it so terrible by Jude Bellingham that makes him a troublesome figure as part of this English national team?
To be honest, I've heard certain things, but I can't say that anything is for sure. But I think as you look back to, say, the Euros in the summer, there were sort of media duties, for example, whereby a lot of the other players are having to share it out, the senior players. You're going to do this, going to do that, going to do whatever. But say, I don't think Jude Bellingham did a lot of that, if any at all. So I think to use that as sort of the way to describe the overall feeling, if everybody's pulling in the same direction, but somebody can still do something themselves, then that creates a separation. I think when people go away for long periods of time, as Ali knows, as Shaka knows, you're going away for 10 days with teammates, not with your best friends. So at some point, things might rub you up the wrong sort of way. And when it ends up being, say, a month away, like I'm going to tend to do, say, at a European Championships or a World Cup, then some of those little things where people are perhaps seeing things in a different light, I think they can cause an issue, especially when somebody is as talented as he is, and he has those moments, as we saw in the last Euros. But again, these are just things that I've heard. It's not something that's there for definite, but he does feel different to the rest of that squad. And in some ways, that's probably what makes him so great. But can they find a way to bring everybody together so that, the collective is pulling to a point to where, they believe they can win a World Cup?